Level-headed people of Reddit. What is a conspiracy theory you actually believe? Story 1. The Titanic or Olympic conspiracy. It has credibility because there is photographic evidence. It's really one of the only conspiracy theories I put much belief in. So here's the conspiracy theory. At some point after the Titanic was completed, they switched the identities of the ships. The new Titanic was actually the Olympic, and the Olympic was actually the brand spanking new Titanic, fresh from the construction yard with zero problems and zero history. They intended for the Titanic to suffer some sort of failure that would result in the destruction of the problem ship so they could collect the insurance money. I doubt they intended to also cause the deaths of 1,500 people. The events that transpired which led to the sinking of the Titanic possibly happened purely by chance, and the iceberg wasn't part of their plan. That is, they didn't hire the captain to specifically ram the iceberg to sink the ship or anything like that. They probably had another plan involving the repairs that had already been made on the ship when it collided with the HMS Hawk. In any case, it wasn't really the Titanic that left port on April 10, 1912, it was the Olympic. Story 2. Secret societies or fraternities or brotherhoods like the Masons, Skull and Bones, etc. actually hold influence. I don't think they're faking the moon landing or rigging elections or planning assassinations. No, they're just behaving like any group of humans who belong to the same club. If you belong to the same country club as the newest job applicant at your company or the senator across the aisle, you're going to look upon that person favorably. Heck, half the hiring decisions in this country are made through connections. I got a job through a guy who used to go to my church. You don't need to concoct some image of robed figures sitting around a long, dimly lit table planning to take over the world to understand how they might influence things. It's just how humans operate. Story 3. Mass surveillance is in a scope that many of us can't comprehend. Very soon, every cell phone, internet history, banking info, social circles, Facebook, who we call, who we interact with, etc. All this data will be collected and aggregated, building a network of information on the general public so they can passively suppress, squash, or limit groups or individuals in unforeseen, passive ways. It's pretty much already here. I live less than an hour away from the NSA data center. That place is massive. You don't build a facility that big just to deal with known threats. The network isn't quite where they want it yet, but they have the resources to support it already. Story 4. I have 3. Social media has been and always will be influenced heavily by governments and corporations. Here are a bunch of articles that explain astroturfing or fake grassroots efforts online. This includes Reddit, Twitter, etc. Various corporations, especially those in the pharmaceutical industry, have much more influence over scientists' results than people generally believe. Depending on the field, 50% or more studies are incorrect for a variety of reasons, including fraud. This is backed up by numerous lines of evidence that you can review. This one is more of a conspiracy fact. Municipal water and chemicals used in soaps, detergents, etc. You might think that there are robust laws in place to prevent you from being poisoned by everyday things, but you are wrong. The laws protecting your water are weak, and the current laws in place are being skirted and broken. Story 5. That there was something fishy about the sinking of the ferry MS Estonia in 1994. Mainly, I still believe the notorious 9 crew members were rescued when it sank, hence their names initially showed up on the widely publicized lists of rescued people, but then intentionally disappeared. I don't know by whom, would look towards Sweden though. I've never seen a satisfactory explanation for their names turning up on the list of survivors, which was being broadcast far and wide, remember Text TV, and then being scrubbed from it in a matter of hours. That night, rescuers from 2 states on several ships and helicopters were fishing the 100+ survivors out of the water one by one, taking their names in the process. Of course, it was all an utter mess and mistakes could happen. There were misspelled names on the list and such. But even if mistakes could happen, they appear to have got the fact of a person's rescue 100% wrong, 9 full times, so 9 phantom names, with supposedly no rescued person to attach to them, ended up on the list, and every time this mistake corresponded to the name of an actual crew member. One of them, a young woman, even turned up on the list under a family nickname in place of her official first name. Her parents believe she might have given the nickname when asked, due to the stress of the situation. And then, nothing. 9 names gone from the list of the rescued, none of their bodies recovered. Something is not right there. Story 6. It's not really a conspiracy in the traditional sense, as I don't think any one group is deliberately influencing it, but in the US at least, essential life skills and useful knowledge are being continually cut in order to favor things like test scores and fields in STEM. Vocational and artistic classes as training are nearly non-existent in the public school system in the US, at least where I grew up. And I feel that while there are multiple pressures from well-meaning people driving this, it's at the end being supported most of all from the upper class as a way to force people into contributing to the existing economic structure and dissuading people from making an exit from the economy or competing by becoming entrepreneurs. Story 7. Pepe the Frog is just a modified version of Shrek, invented to seduce the internet masses into Shrekism. Already Pepe is being identified with a meme deity called Kek. How long until Kek becomes Shrek and the conversion is complete? Why do you think Trump wants to drain the swamp? Oh, the ogre can come home. And as for what happens when the ogre returns, consider the other characters of the original Shrek film. A donkey, an evil emperor, a dragon, and a woman who only appears human by daylight, or as a Roman-era prophet might interpret it, Caesar, the animal upon which the Messiah is said to arrive, the great red dragon and the woman clothed in sun. Story 8. That we do not and never will have a say as nations as to how the countries we live in are run. Your country is not your country. It is the extreme rich's country, and they will not have critical thinking, educated people have any form of control. They play the big game, influencing the uninformed and careless masses through various platforms and making sure we are always distracted and believing we've got it good. Control with fear. Control with entertainment. Control with economic dissonance. I feel like a crazy person just typing this out, but it's something I truly believe. The system will eventually collapse as all systems do, but history repeats itself, and greed will forever be the strongest character of the human race. Story 9, something, actually, a lot of things, about this election seems very, very off. There's definitely a lot more going on behind closed doors than we're aware of. I don't buy for a second most of what is being sold to the public as truth. I truly believe there was a grand plan that everyone was on board with to give Clinton the presidency. Maybe the American people threw a wrench in it. Maybe it's still unfolding and this is still part of the plan. I think we will learn a lot more about what is happening right now over the coming decades. Story 10. I do not think Trump wants to be president. Look at his facial expressions. I have never been one for conspiracy theories, but this is one that I am believing, and am now finding people that do. At first he talked about draining the swamp. It sounded really good. Now that he got elected, he is freaking out inside and can't really do that because he has no idea what to do. So he has to fill his cabinet with people who know politics because otherwise nothing would happen. I mean, things wouldn't happen anyway, maybe. I also have a theory he will resign because he will get bored. I don't think he is as dangerous as everyone thinks. Excess. Story 11. The government actually killed Tupac and Biggie. The evidence supports that the crime rate in areas they were most popular dropped significantly after due to the position other rappers took on violence and gang violence after their deaths in 1996 and 1997 respectively. I think it was a setup to lower the crime rate and Snoop had a large influence on it as well. He sparked the focus on hip-hop music, to turn from gang violence, and if anyone has the answer, it's him. SNOP, if you see this, massage me ASAP and we can talk on a secure point line. I need answers, and I have a feeling that as the state of hip-hop has turned with these new crap rappers like Young Thug, another death is coming. I bet it was Kanye and he knew. That's why he went off the deep end to get the public opinion of him lowered because he didn't want to be killed like the beloved Notorious B.I.G. and Tupac. But that's just my opinion. Story 12. Area 51 definitely has some advanced technology that it is testing. Is it alien? That's a stretch, but I would certainly believe things are going on there that are beyond our comprehension. I actually believe the opposite conspiracy. Area 51 is just an old base used as a false flag to distract from actual secret operations. The US government actively encourages UFO theories and possibly even flies UFOs with the purpose of distracting from experimental aircraft testing. Bearcraft also seem to be naturally fit for this type of diversion. You know those mysterious oh my god UFO with triangle lights? Story 13. I believe that some form of alien life exists. The odds of a planet with life on it is very low, but there are a lot of planets in the universe. I'd also like to note that if an alien species that is as evolved as humans exists, it will be pretty much impossible for them to contact us, or vice versa. I previously said that the odds were 1,000,000,000 to 1, but I did no prior research on the subject. I don't know anything about outer space. Story 14. I think that atmospheric testing of atomic bombs is at least partly, if not largely, responsible for causing many types of cancer. I also believe that when this information came to light, in an effort to escape blame, the Allied governments paid scientists to conclude that cigarettes were entirely responsible for lung cancer. Smoking is clearly bad for your health, but I don't think it's solely responsible for the volume of cancer patients in the world. I don't see it. Atomic bombs are radioactive, but not that radioactive, and unless they're designed for it, generally cause little to no amounts of medium half-life isotopes to form, which are the ones you're worrying about in this situation. Long-lived ones don't radiate enough. Short-lived ones die too fast. Most of the radiation dissipates pretty fast, and you can see that by looking at Hiroshima and Nagasaki. They had bombs detonate directly on them, and they're doing fine now. I'd expect this if a cobalt bomb was tested, but to date no cobalt bomb has been built, and attempting to do that or test one would inevitably cause a global crapstorm and an escalation of the arms race nobody wants. Story 15. I believe that there is a conspiracy between executives of social media companies to repress free speech by letting people inside these companies moderate content so that it doesn't interfere with the mission of their business partners to use social media as a marketing platform. That is why they can make markdown format available and no one uses it, even though it would allow bloggers to directly answer a post and reply to it point by point. Not only have mobile carriers assured that people will continue to not talk to each other, but past one another in blogs by making text services too expensive, but the social media companies do not want real conversations in which people are empowered to really dissect posts and reply in a direct and useful way. The placing of business above effective speech is the reason for the fake news problem and why analytics will not solve the abuse. It is why social media has contributed to political division and not solved it. Let users criticize posts directly and comment on them point by point. Google and Facebook are prime offenders in the area because they refuse to allow for markdown format. Reddit is only a little better in that it does allow it, but 95% of its users are not encouraged or trained so that they will use it. I suspect that the tiny mobile display is the reason. I have an advantage because I use a desktop and don't use one of those devices because of poor vision. I hope that 40 by 80 character resolutions will become the minimum again. Make devices on which you could get that kind of space and trash all the 3G and 4G phones that give you much less. Story 16. I get the feeling that those with a lot of money are aware that A, the Earth is way overpopulated, and B, climate change is real. They are trying to push the climate to alter the planet to the point where it is unlivable for many because they know that they are the most likely to survive comfortably. Also, I can see how 9/11 would be perpetrated by members of the US government, but on a much smaller scale than lots of conspiracy theorists argue. All you would really need to pull off an attack like that is a few well-placed people in positions of power, agents willing to carry out the actual hijacking, surprise, and chaos. It's obvious at this point that the terrorists were mostly Saudis, and there are plenty of connections between powerful Saudis and the president and his cabinet at the time. If you know about the project for a new American century and the people involved, they certainly got exactly what they wanted, and now they're certainly a lot wealthier. Not to mention that the Saudis are seeing their enemies dropping like flies in the region. Win-win for all of them. You don't need thousands of government employees to be in on it, nor do you need a demolition team in each of the towers. Science explains the buildings falling down. People are on the right track. They're just getting caught up in the magnitude of it. If you think about it on a smaller scale, it plays out like a crappy Bond movie, where the Bush family and the Saudis are the idiot bad guys, except so far, they haven't gotten caught. Story 17. I don't know if it's a true conspiracy, but I truly believe that we could have cured many chronic diseases by now. But the drug companies make so much off of prolonging them, it's better to let people be slightly entirely miserable forever and make money off of them than to cure them. I doubt it. Any company who discovers a permanent cure for X will become extremely rich. The industry as a whole will make less money, but that one company is going to make so much dosh and their competitors are going to get messed up as their products are suddenly worthless. So it offers them a much better competitive advantage for a short while, which can easily be turned into a long-term gain. Story 18. If a conspiracy requires intentional cover-ups, not merely omission, then there are a few I genuinely believe. First up, that the BBC absolutely knew, at least the directors and those working with him, what was going on with Jimmy Savile, but for a myriad of reasons decided not to pursue it, and then when the scandal broke, tried to make it go away. Secondly, for the history buffs amongst you, Suharto was absolutely involved in the coup that led to Sukarno handing him power, which he then used to purge the communists who he blamed for it. Story 19. Reagan's presidency was a CIA coup of the American government. He was a puppet and his handler was H.W. Bush. It worked so well that they decided they didn't need a puppet and could literally put one of their own in charge. It worked at first, but they didn't see Clinton coming and ended up losing control of the presidency to him. The 2000 election was them seizing control through messier, underhanded tactics. I'm not sure what their relation to Obama is, but Trump's presidency is the result of a high-stakes espionage game between the American and Russian intelligence agencies. And the Russians won. Also, Shays' Rebellion was the very first false flag operation performed by the would-be United States, and purposely instigated in order to get the people involved in restructuring the American government under the Constitution to be on board with a more centralized authority as opposed to letting the individual states have more autonomy. And like any great conspiracy, I don't really have any evidence besides my own meek interpretation of those events, as I have poorly learned about them. Story 20. Putting braces on teens is a total money grab and 99% of the time is totally useless and even harmful. If you have enough issues to have a medical need for braces, you would be going to a maxillofacial surgeon from a very young age. Suddenly going to an orthodontist at 13 and being told to get braces is just a way to get teens who are often bad at hygiene and resistant to parent involvement in hygiene to exacerbate poor dental health and require more fillings and other treatments once the braces come off. I think that there should be a minimum age for cosmetic braces. Most parents are either not willing to supervise their 12 to 16-year-olds' toothbrushing habits anymore or are unable due to the teen's desire for privacy. People should not have braces until they have the self-control, frontal lobe development, to maintain consistent and effective oral hygiene without supervision. Story 21. What I call the small WTC conspiracy. Now, I do believe that hijackers crashed airliners into the buildings and all the rest of that story. That's pretty much established. What I don't believe, however, is that the aircraft should have taken down the buildings. Aircraft have hit skyscrapers before without them falling. Skyscrapers have burned before for much longer without them falling. Now, people claim it was the jet fuel, but you saw the huge fireball? That was the jet fuel, spent in a matter of seconds. Jet fuel can melt steel, but not when it goes up in a big whoosh. So, what's the conspiracy? Well, I think the fire-suppressing systems in the buildings had somehow been lacking in some way. It shouldn't have had such catastrophic effects. The fire should have been extinguished and the buildings left standing, but due to some flaw, it didn't. Now, at this time, politically, it was important to be able to pin all the blame on someone outside the US. It wouldn't have been feasible to say, yeah, some terrorist did this, but it wouldn't have been much of a problem if we hadn't made the building so weak. Though, that part of the story got covered up. Also, as far as conspiracies go, this only needs a few people to know, and all of them have very good reasons to keep quiet. Story 22. The United Nations is actively doing everything it can to work towards a world governed. Quotes by H.L. Mencken, famous columnist. The whole aim of practical politics is to keep the populace alarmed, and hence clamorous to be led to safety, by menacing it with an endless series of hobgoblins, all of them imaginary. And the urge to save humanity is almost always only a false face for the urge to rule it.
Or pass.
Quote from the UN's own Agenda 21. Effective execution of Agenda 21 will require a profound reorientation of all human society. Unlike anything the world has ever experienced, a major shift in the priorities of both governments and individuals, and an unprecedented redeployment of human and financial resources. This shift will demand that a concern for the environmental consequences of every human action be integrated into individual and collective decision-making at every level. Quote by Otmar Edenhofer, high-level UN IPCC official. We redistribute de facto the world's wealth by climate policy. Basically, it's a big mistake to discuss climate policy separately from the major themes of globalization. One has to free oneself from the illusion that international climate policy is environmental policy. This has almost nothing to do with environmental policy anymore. Story 23. For me, it's that we're really more technology advanced than we actually let on. It's just that we aren't responsible enough to deal with these advances yet. The potential for catastrophic social disruption and abuse of this knowledge forces the discoverer to commit academic scorched earth to prevent this. Also, while not so much a recognized conspiracy theory, I'm inclined to believe that the Titanic was sunk, if not directly by an iceberg, then as a victim of a Royal Navy training accident. In preparation for the inevitable Battle of the Atlantic and the equally inevitable war with the Kaiser, the Royal Navy made an agreement with White Star Line to use the ship's maiden voyage as a cover to test new techniques in naval warfare, and to test the sturdiness of Olympic class if they needed to serve as a personnel and cargo carrier. But something went wrong, perhaps a navigation or fire control error during a simulated attack. It would account for the presence of the mystery ship, which may have been a commerce raider or submarine that was participating in the exercise. Despite the tragedy, however, it led to advances in safety and tactics that would prove invaluable when war broke out in 1914. Story 24. Some people say Trump was a plant by Hillary to guarantee her win, but I think Kasich was the plant. The guy stood no chance, and he was the last contender to drop in the Republican primaries, and he was dead last. Sure, he had the Ohio influence, but that wasn't going to guarantee him anything. The guy was so forgettable. The exact opposite of Trump. Basically, the guy was just a voter pull magnet that served to take from Rubio and Cruz, stopping them from overtaking Trump. Basic stubbornness resulted in both of them dropping, and once they were out of the race, he graciously left as well, securing Trump the nomination. Hillary was certain that she would have won in these circumstances, but, well, you know, she didn't. I guess the other end of the spectrum would be that Trump hired Kasich himself. Story 25. The problem here is what to believe when the media, truthers, and shills have proven themselves to be liars and frauds since their inception. Since we cannot discern what's really true and what isn't, we should all focus on what's really relevant to us. William Casey is quoted as saying, "We'll know our disinformation program is complete when everything the American public believes is false." We don't have to believe something is true or not. It's a fallacy and based on a person's perception tied into ego. It's divide and conquer over what one believes is true. It's a war of minds. In a trial, the jury has to be convinced. Doesn't matter what the truth is. Story 26. Well, I have a gotcha theory I throw out once in a while. Was Jonestown genocide? Or was it mind control? The popular theory is mind control of a cult. If so, that means mind control is possible, from what Koreans were conducting as brainwashing on POWs during the conflict, to Manchurian candidates, to propaganda, to subliminal messages, to chemical control, to MKUltra, to mass cult influence to cause folks to kill themselves, if not castrate themselves or hurt others as a prerequisite. After all, control is the holy grail of all conspiracies. It is what every empire lusts for. To deny this is to do a great disservice to history as recorded, yet Kool-Aid was not implemented. Yet it is a popular cliche used by uneducated idiots, using it as a term to brand anything they see as being cultish, be it a humble mainstream religious denomination that has been around for over 500 years. That is a fact. Story 27. I would like to think that I'm level-headed and reasonably intelligent, PhD, etc., and am not a conspiracy theorist in any way. But I honestly cannot believe that America achieved a manned moon landing in 1969, 47 years ago. How? At that time, they had less computing power available than we now have in a $10 digital watch. I work in the entertainment industry, so I know that in 2016, it takes a pretty sizable crew of experts to shoot even the most pathetic soap opera in breathable air with loads of lights, camera, and sound equipment available. So I can't really understand how 3 men in spacesuits managed to produce those images and broadcast them to Earth. And if it were achievable in 1969, why haven't we been going there on a regular basis since? Story 28, the Korean fan death conspiracy. A great thing to Google for those of you that like random information. So for some reason, for like 60 plus years, some people in Korea believed running a fan in a closed room can be fatal. A conspiracy theory came out that the Korean government actually tried to put legitimacy behind this myth of fan death, just to lower the amount of energy consumption in homes. Considering how prevalent propaganda by governments was in the early and mid-1900s, I totally believe it. I never said government propaganda doesn't exist anymore, guys, DLM foul. I was just pointing out how obviously prevalent it was during those times, especially due to the wars occurring. Story 29. There are so many. I'm surprised the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. never gets mentioned. Quote from Wikipedia. In 1979, the United States House Select Committee on Assassinations, HSCA, released a report stating that there was a likelihood of conspiracy in the assassination of King. In 1990, a mixed-race jury at a Memphis civil suit reached a unanimous verdict that King was assassinated as a result of a conspiracy involving the U.S. government, a person named Raoul, among others. There is abundant evidence, Coretta King said after the verdict, of a major, high-level conspiracy in the assassination of my husband. The jury found the mafia and various local, state, and federal government agencies were deeply involved in the assassination. Mr. Ray was set up to take the blame. Story 30. The Coca-Cola Company introduced new Coke, which had a completely different taste than the Coke they had made for 100 years, and people hated it. It was a complete flop. Several months later, Coca-Cola introduced Coke Classic, which was the old Coke recipe. After a while, they discontinued New Coke. What's the conspiracy theory? Well, this all happened at about the same time that they transitioned from sugar to HFCS. By introducing New Coke, having people clear the shelves of old Coke, and then introducing Coke Classic with HFCS, nobody noticed the transition from sugar to HFCS, and instead celebrated Coke Classic's return. Story 31. It is actual Muppets canon that Kermit the Frog, in some way, had a role in bringing down the Twin Towers in the terror attacks of September 11, 2001. In a Muppets Christmas film released in late 2002, Kermit is shown a glimpse of what New York City might look like if he had never been born. Among the scenery of this alternate reality NYC, we find none other than the Twin Towers, proudly standing in the background. They were of course long destroyed in Kermit's normal reality, and yet in the world without Kermit, the war on terror is missing its powder keg spark. Who would have thought that green piece of crap could Kermit a terror attack on US soil? But there it stands, unimpeachable. We have concrete, canon proof of involvement. Why the world hasn't stopped and asked further questions is only further proof of a media cabal keeping this conversation away from the masses. The Twin Towers would still be standing if it weren't for Kermit the Frog. Al-Qaeda was the puppet this time, and Kermit the hand within. Story 32. Our smartphones are spying on us. I used to go as far as to stick my nose up at people who didn't own smartphones because they felt like they were being spied on. I thought it was the most ridiculous, delusional thing ever. That was before I started frequently getting ads for products that I had never purchased or ever looked up online, but had recently spoken about with someone. Just the other day, I was talking to someone about how I hadn't eaten it in years, but I remember loving President's Choice white cheddar macaroni and cheese as a child, and then literally right after that getting ads for it, when I had never searched anything remotely close to it or seen any ads for it. This happens to me frequently. Extremely creepy crap that's almost not even a conspiracy anymore. Everyone has experienced this, and somehow we're not talking about it more. Story 33. The term conspiracy theorist is used by the people in power to ridicule and mock the people who look too closely into the suspicious things the government does in order to discredit them. That way, when a conspiracy theorist actually finds the truth, no one would believe them, because they're a crazy tinfoil hat-wearing conspiracy theorist. Stargate SG-1's 100th episode actually made use of this. Why would they let an alien make a ridiculous TV show based on the SGC? Plausible deniability. After it aired, should any further leaks occur, they could always paint the would-be whistleblower as just riffing off the TV show and discredit them that way. Also, remember the evil overlord list. I will see to it that plucky young lads/lasses in strange clothes and with the accent of an outlander shall regularly climb some monument in the main square of my capital and denounce me, claim to know the secret of my power, rally the masses to rebellion, etc. That way, the citizens will be jaded in case the real thing ever comes along. Story 34. Mattress firms are a front for money laundering. Pretty well heard of, but it can't go unmentioned. There are mattress firms all over, multiple chains in each city. They are always empty. Mattresses are on about a 10-year life per mattress purchased, meaning the demand isn't insanely high and certainly not high enough to keep multiple in business per city. The only reasonable explanation is that it is a front for a sizable money laundering scheme. Story 34, that Mars is the former Earth, and much of, if not some of, life transplanted here may be accidental microbes on a lander, as this planet became more habitable and Mars uninhabitable many millions of years ago. Intelligent species may have reached a technological apex on Mars before it lost its atmosphere and eventually just eroded into an iron desert, far before we grew intelligent enough or evolved enough to know what's up. Most believable to me, at least. We like to think we're special, but it's entirely possible we weren't the first ones to figure out the fundamental sciences to such a degree of mastery. There's also overwhelming evidence that Mars was once Earth-like. Story 35. The Titanic wasn't the Titanic. It was its sister ship, the Oceanic. Theory. When the Oceanic was launched from dry dock, a short time after she collided with a Royal Navy ship, the impact position was on the front right side of the ship. The Oceanic was no longer seaworthy and had to be brought back into dry dock for repairs. Her sister ship, the Titanic, was nearing completion, but was visually identical. The names were swapped, the Oceanic became the Titanic, by Titanic Harrow Road and Thick Sodic. So the new Titanic has a patch job that needs a lot of money to make it seaworthy. During the voyage, the collision with the iceberg happens. The ship that comes to the rescue was sitting in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean for many hours with their engines at full pressure, not moving. During a time when coal was very expensive, just burning money, ultimately, it was an insurance job and went very wrong. Obviously, no one was supposed to die or become the tragic loss of life they became, but the newly named Titanic, originally Oceanic, collides with the iceberg in the same position as it collided with the Royal Navy vessel. Was it supposed to be as devastating as it was? Did they expect a few dents or just damage the patch on the ship's hull? Anyway, plenty of info around this theory through a few Google searches. Do I believe it? Not wholeheartedly, but it has an air of plausibility.